Pulitzer Prize-winning author Toni Morrison published her breakout novel, The Bluest Eye, when she was 39 years old. Bob Ross, painter Bob Ross, remember him? Spent 20 years in the Air Force before retiring and taking up painting and becoming everyone's favorite painter of the happy little tree. Cinematographic genius director Ang Lee was a stay-at-home dad until his breakout movie, Sense and Sensibility, in 1995 when he was 41. Henry Ford was 45 when he created the revolutionary Model T car. Julia Child was 49 before she revolutionized cooking in this country. Morgan Freeman's breakout year happened when he was like 50, 52 as an actor. Dame Judi Dench was a stage actor, but didn't become known as a screen actor until she was 60. And Laura Ingalls Wilder, the writer of Little House on the Prairie, didn't publish her first book until she was 65. We often talk about successful people as though they were destined for greatness, as though they were on track for stardom at a young age and they never wavered. But what is true for many of them, and what is certainly true for most of us, normal folk, is that it can often take some time to find our footing, to find our grip on life. Many of us change direction several times over the course of our lives, or we alternate between having a direction and feeling directionless over and over again. Though many in my grandparents' generation just basically worked one job, the same job, for their whole lives, some estimates say that the most in my child's generation will work in jobs that have not even been invented yet for most of their lives, fields we cannot even yet fathom. And when I felt behind in my life over the years, like I'm not doing enough, I'm not far enough along, I returned to this list of incredible people who didn't find their break right away in life either, and who surely had many moments themselves where they felt grief or shame or disappointment or defeat for not being where they wanted to be in their life, for not having found their niche yet. There is a saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Second best time is now. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. If we seek shade from a too fierce sun, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. If we seek a greener world with cleaner air, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. If we seek a sweet, crisp fall apple, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is still now. Planting a tree now, whether we're talking about a literal tree or a metaphorical one, it doesn't bring instant gratification. You don't get many fruit, if any, the first year that you plant a tree. The shade from a sapling is pretty sparse. The leaves from that tiny little shoot will remove pollution and they'll trade carbon dioxide for oxygen a little bit. But only a few leaves mean that the air is only a little bit cleaner at first. So yeah, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, 5 years ago, or 85 years ago, but we can't go backwards in time. We can't change the decisions that our earlier selves made. And though there may have been infinitely many better times to take action, or to refrain from taking action than now, all we have is this moment. And so the second best time for everything is always going to be now. This saying was posted on the sign outside of our neighbor church, the Unitarian Society of Germantown, several months ago, last winter and spring. And when I first saw that sign, I was very pregnant, and I was driving by it every time I went to my regular appointments with my midwife up in Germantown. And after I gave birth in April, I again drove by every week as I made my way to the breastfeeding and chest feeding group that happened at my midwife's office, where I would go to meet other new parents and babies and ask the endless questions that people who have no idea what they're doing ask when they have just become parents. Nova is my first child, and he was born a few weeks after my 40th birthday. Throughout my 20s and 30s, it felt like I had ages of childbearing years ahead of me. I've always known that I wanted to be a parent, and as my mother was a childbirth educator and an obstetrical nurse, I've always been fascinated with pregnancy and birth since I was a child. And though I knew that I was going to be delighted to become a parent in any manner it became possible for me, I had always hoped to experience pregnancy and labor myself someday. But my first marriage ended when I was 28, right before we probably would have considered trying to get pregnant. And then I spent a period of 7 years in and out of singledom and a series of relationships that were never going to become partnerships, never going to become co-parenting relationships. When Kai and I fell in love, I was 35, and we wanted a few years together before taking that monumental step of trying to have kids together. Once we were ready, it took another couple of years for me to get pregnant because of the complications of pregnancy when you're queer. How do you choose a donor? How do you decide to start trying? What kind of medical support do you need? How many legal documents do you have to draw up? When mainstream America was joking about how many babies would be conceived out of boredom in the pandemic lockdown, most of us in the queer community and those of us who were experiencing infertility were devastated to have to put our family plans on hold because fertility clinics were considered non-essential and shut down for many, many months. Time runs out at some point for every person who has a uterus and ovaries, as I do, who wishes to carry a child. And for many of us, that time runs out sometime around my age. I feel inordinately lucky that I was able to get pregnant and carry a child, a healthy child, without huge complications. Nearly all of my closest friends have struggled at least as much, if not quite a lot more, than I did. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. Being a 40-year-old first-time parent means that my body is less resilient. Sleep deprivation is way harder now than it was when I was 20. I felt so weak after Nova was born that it was often hard to even hold him. It was hard to walk even a few blocks at the end of my pregnancy and in the first few months of his life. I've never really noticed the limits of my body. I've never really noticed my age as much as I have in this pregnancy and since he was born. And there are other challenges too, because we're older. Turns out so are our families. And so Nova is starting his life not only with slightly older parents, maybe a lot older parents, but also older aunts and uncles, older grandparents. And when I think about the key moments of his life ahead of him, his high school graduation will take place when I'm 58, and my own father passed away when he was 56. If Nova has kids at the same age I did, I won't be a grandmother until I'm 80. And the average lifespan for a woman is only something like 81. I often grieve these future moments that I may not be there for, or that I may not be in good shape for. The weight of those future unknowns, the weight of the possibilities that might be lost to me or to my child in the future because of my age sometimes feels crushing to me, devastating. And it feels clear that, in many ways, the best time to have had a child was maybe 20 years ago. The grief of not having done that sometimes hits me like a tidal wave. And so in those moments, I try to take comfort in remembering that the best time was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. In our lives, there are some opportunities we genuinely miss. There is no second best time, it's just gone. And there are some things that can't be done now that might have been done 20 years ago. But instead of sinking beneath that sense of defeat from missing those opportunities, we each have the choice instead to breathe deeply and try to broaden our perspective. The Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The practice of mindfulness can always transform, even transform the past." You think that the past is already gone, and you cannot do anything concerning the past, but that's not true. You can change the past because the past is still there in the present, still here in the present. The world of the past is still here in the present moment, and you can even touch it. Suppose in the past you said something unkind to your grandma. This is what Thich Nhat Hanh says. You said something unkind to your grandma, and now you regret it because your grandma is no longer here for you to say sorry. And you have that complex of guilt that follows you all the time. According to this practice, he says, you can do something. He says you breathe in and out mindfully, and you recognize that your grandma is still alive in every cell of your body. And I believe that this is true. The imprint of those we love lives with us, regardless of whether we're genetically connected to them. You continue your grandma. We continue all those we love who are gone. That is the truth. Your grandma has not really died, he says. She continues. And so having seen your grandma in you, you begin to say, "Grandma, I am sorry. I was not skillful. And I promise you that from now on I will never say something like that again." If you are sincere and mindful and determined, Thich Nhat Hanh says, then you can see your grandma and you smiling, and you are healed, he says. You can transform the past. You can make an aspiration, a strong aspiration, that from now on you will not say things like that anymore. And that is a powerful energy that can make you feel lighter. The best time to have not said that mean thing to your grandma was in the past, but the second best time is now, and that opportunity is never lost. So many of us carry so much grief and shame and regret about those things that we didn't do. It's hard for us to forgive the people that we used to be, those people who caused harm, or those people who forgot to take action, those people who forgot something or someone who was important to them. A lot of us feel regret, we feel defeat, we choose to give up. But we don't have to ignore those feelings and pretend everything is fine. What we can do is carry the grief with us, but not allow ourselves to sink beneath it. I can't go back and have Nova 20 years ago, but I can choose to be as healthy as I can be now. I can make a strong aspiration to get into better shape, to care for my mind and my body and my spirit now, even if I didn't in the past. I can make that choice and change not only the present, but perhaps the future as well. So we are in the middle of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah that many Jews in this congregation and around the world are celebrating. We're almost at its end. And many of you know the Hanukkah story. As the enormous Greek opposing forces had finally been driven from the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, Hebrew scriptures tell us that the Maccabees discovered amongst their ransacked temple that almost all of their ritual olive oil had been destroyed. Only one container that was still sealed by the high priest remained. And though it would take 8 days to have new oil pressed and made ready for use and blessed, the Maccabees burned that one remaining jar of blessed oil and found that somehow that 1 day of supply of oil lasted 8 days until new oil was ready. Hanukkah therefore observes what are considered to be two of the ancient Jewish miracles. One, that militaristic victory, but the second, that 1 day's worth of oil lasted 8 days. That's normally the one we hear about. Matisyahu and Nathanael Miles Yepes say the Hebrew word Hanuk means to dedicate. And when we use the word Hanukkah, we're really talking about the rededication of the temple after it's been desecrated, and the rededicating of our lives to a relationship with the source of all, what some of us call God. Rabbi David Volpe says there is no holiday in the Jewish tradition devoted to remembering the dedication, not the original dedication of the temple. There isn't a holiday for that. There's only a holiday called Hanukkah when the temple was restored to its former glory. And why is that? He says that Hanukkah is about something more important than the initial dedication. It's about that rededication, that is what is the most holy thing. In our lives, what we do once is hardly as important as what we do over and over and over again. And so rededication, that is the miracle. He says the world is rife with worthy causes that we have taken up with enthusiasm and then abandoned. So rededicate yourself to repairing the anguished world, he says. If we manage that, the oil will burn for countless nights to come. I believe what he says, that much of what is worth doing, maybe most of what is worth doing, is what we do over and over again in our lives. It takes time. It takes time to build. Everything meaningful about this congregation took time to grow. And many of those who grew it had no idea what cooling shade would come from the trees that they planted 20 years ago, what their gifts would offer to our parched souls, what fruit would grow from their trees that nourishes us today. I'm aware in this time when we make our pledges to the church that we are pledging not just for now, but for that generation who comes after us, because we receive the gifts of the generation before. So my friends, what is coming up for you today? What opportunity did you miss 20 years ago that you have not returned to because you think you missed the right time for it? What second best time is now opportunity might you harness this week in your life? When I talked with a colleague who had a kid both at 20 and at 40, and I asked them what the difference was, it's like, it was easier at 20, right? They said, well, yeah, it was physically easier, but it's emotionally easier now. It's emotionally easier now. What opportunities have arisen in your life because you missed that other opportunity 20 years ago? What gifts have come in your life for waiting for the second best time? I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have become a minister if I'd had a kid 20 years ago. Certainly don't think I would have become your minister. And oh my God, what a gift that is in my life. Whether you are literally going to go and plant a tree this week, which is, not the best time of year to do that, but I encourage us all to plant a tree at some point in the next few months, in the next year of our life, because the world needs us to. Or whether you're simply going to attend to some opportunity, something important that you thought was lost in your life from a long time ago. My friends, may it bear fruit in your life. And if not in your life, may it bear fruit for someone who will come after you. May it be so, and amen.
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abbey Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, and you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together, and we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abbey just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.